In this video, I'll show you how to solve the ALEKS problem called approximating the equation of a line of best fit and making predictions. This problem is going to give you a scatter plot. It wants you to write an approximate equation for the line that could be fit through this data, and then use the equation that you come up with in part A to calculate something based on a variable that's provided. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is use the line drawing tool to actually draw a line through the data. And you want to try to make this relatively easy on yourself when you do this. So start and stop your lines when you're identifying the beginning and end point of the line. Do it at some place. This can be relatively easy for you to estimate the actual value where that point has been dropped. So by that I mean, like when I'm estimating this line, I think that maybe I'd like to start my line of best fit like right here, because that's an easy point for me to see the values. The x value is 10, the y value is 1. I don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to draw my line, like maybe I'm going to go like this. Like maybe that's the line that I choose to draw. That looks like a pretty good fit. And from there, once I have that line, so use that line tool, draw that line in place. Once I have that line identified, then I can get to work calculating the equation of the line. Remember, the equation of the line takes the format y equals mx plus b. We have to come up with the numerical values of m and b. M represents the slope of the line, and b represents the y-intercept. And in order to get this problem correct, you need to calculate the slope and calculate the y-intercept. Don't just kind of eyeball it and say, oh, that's what looks good. Like, for example, it looks here like my y-intercept is 9, but I'm not going to trust my eyeballs. I'm actually going to calculate the y-intercept. So for the slope of the line, which is the rise over the run, I am going to count from this point here, which is x equals 0, y equals 9, and I'm going to count all my way to the other point, which is x equals 10, y equals 1. The slope is the rise over the run. And this line is going to have a negative slope because the rise portion is moving down the y-axis. So my rise goes from y equals 9 down to y equals 1, 9 minus 1, which is 8. And the run of my line goes from x equals 0 over to x equals 10. Actually, I think x equals 0 over to x equals 10. There we go. So the slope of my line is going to be 8 over negative 10, or negative 8 over 10, which simplifies down to negative 4/5. And ALEKS does want this in decimal form. So even though I know we all know that's 0.8, but we're going to pull the calculator up anyway so we can do the math on that, just so we can see. 4 divided by 5 is 0.8, negative 0.8. That is my slope. Then for the y-intercept, like I said, you don't want to eyeball it. You want to actually calculate it using the slope that you have come up with and any point on this graph. So I could just use this point right here to calculate my y-intercept. If I'm choosing to use this point and I'm using my slope of negative 0.8, my y value is 1. I'm plugging into the y equals mx plus b. My slope is negative 0.8. My x value is 10. And I'm going to solve for b. 1 equals negative 8 plus b. Add 8 to both sides of this equation. B equals 9. So it is exactly what it looks like in terms of the line that I sketched out, but when you draw this line yourself, in the points that you pick might not be spot on, so make sure that you're actually doing the math on this in order to get the problem correct. So the equation for the line that I've come up with is negative 0.8 x plus b. Now the second part of the line says to use the equation to predict the time spent, whatever, 4 hours texting. Texting in this graph is the x variable. So it's telling me here, if x equals 4, what is y? We don't really need to know what the story is. Alex is trying to confuse us by putting a lot of words in here. You can just start ignoring stuff that you don't need to pay attention to. 4 hours of texting. Texting is the x variable. So this problem is saying when x equals 4, what is the value of y? Now, what you don't want to do with this problem is go to the graph and just kind of guesstimate what that is based off of the graph. That's going to probably end up with an incorrect answer. So you don't want to approximate the answer for this part of the problem. Even though we approximated up here, Alex wants you to use the equation that you came up with to solve for the y variable in my case. It is going to use the equation that you put in this box to calculate y to see if you're getting this correct. So whatever you've written up here, this is the equation that you need to use to solve for y. Y is my equation, negative 0.8. The x value that it wants us to be using is x equals 4. So I'm just plugging this into my equation. 0.8 times 4, I believe, is 3.2, but let's just double check it. So y is negative 3.2 plus 9. And kind of running out of room here. Y is, I believe that is 5.8, but let's double check that as well. 9 minus 3.2 is 5.8. Whatever answer you get, express it to as many decimal points as the calculator gives you, because it doesn't really say anything here about how many decimal places to use in your answer. So I say just use all of them.